Welcome to All Worn Out. I'm your host, Warren Meredith. On the show today, musician Darren Michael Boyd. He's the creator of the spooky surf sound. Over the years, he played in some pretty awesome bands, did the recording and touring thing, but since 2019, Darren's been focused on his own sound. Let's get into it now and find out more about Darren Michael Boyd. Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Worn Out. It's a podcast about music. It's a podcast about what you're passionate about, and it's a podcast about what our guest is passionate about. Today, we are very excited, lucky, energized to bring in the fantastic guitarist, song composer, and more. Believe me, folks, we've got the incredible Darren Michael Boyd. Darren, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. This is a blast. I'm having fun already. Just got here.
Heck yeah, man. And I can tell by like some of your musical influences that like you appreciate the 70s vibe down here and, you know, the whole vinyl love and all that kind of stuff.
I love the wall. It's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, because you mentioned, you know, your love of Kiss, Alice Cooper, Meatloaf, Queen.
Yeah.
On the show, Kiss and Queen have come up like all the time.
Not
like
surprising.
they just keep popping up, you know. And it's not me bringing them up, even though I could easily be that one. And Meatloaf is like one of my favorites. The performance in Rocky Horror Picture Show is so brilliant in my opinion. Yeah. And all of that was just so good. And I'm glad that triggered his career, but it also makes me annoyed that like people ignored him before that and like weren't like quite letting him get his glory, but I'm glad he did get his glory. And man, though.
And Jim Steinman's writing too. That was just, brilliant.
Yeah. And Alice Cooper is the king of theatrical rock music. So I think we all, we love him if you love the stage. And you do like theatrical shows. What was the theatrical show you took part in? I think it was last year.
You mean like the musical theater stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a few of them. I did Queen's We Will Rock You. That was the first one I did. And it was a real learning experience, obviously. And not to mention I was doing all Brian May's stuff, like one guitar. It was just me. So I was like, all right, how does this harmonizer work? And doing it in the context of a play too, right? So that's a whole other thing. Like you're not playing full songs necessarily. And then what was the other thing? Dolly Parton's 9 to 5. I just did that. Both of those were Mississippi Muds, the theater group. And really great learning experience. And I thought I came into the Dolly Parton one kind of like last minute. I was sort of thrown into it and I'm like, yeah, I'd love to do it. And I'm thinking in my mind, how hard can this be? Well, everybody involved was like, this music is madness because it wasn't just like, okay, the songs, 9 to 5, it's pretty simple. But every song had like 5 key changes and it was just all over the like musical theater, right? Like what kind of weird crap can we throw at you?
That's nuts.
It was crazy. Yeah.
She is like a legendary performer and
writer
and writer. She's written for so many people, and of course,
people don't know that what she's like her writing of it. And she actually these songs weren't written. She went when she found out they were doing, she was approached that they were doing the stage show. She went and wrote all those songs for it, except for 9 to 5, which is the movie. But when she did that, obviously somebody came along and arranged them for the theater, that's where you get all the key changes and the time signature tempo changes. And it's like, wow, this is crazy. So it wasn't really, there was nothing musical that was challenging in terms of chords and playing, but what was challenging was, remembering everything. And I'm not a great sight reader. So I've got the thing in front of me and I'm just like, whatever. I don't need it. I just learn it and play it. But
Okay, so let's go back in time. And what is your first earliest musical memory from childhood?
First thing I can remember was like where I was listening to music repeatedly was the Davy Crockett theme, like this, Disney record,
Yeah.
45.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, because there was a comic book with it and I loved, reading and
The interaction of
yeah.
the two.
So there was something multimedia, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it was.
Yeah, so I was listening to that over and over and over again. And it was very close to that. I think it was either my birthday, I was about 7, birthday or Christmas. I don't know which one it was, but I got Kiss Destroyer and Alice Cooper Love It to Death. And that changed my life. And it was because of my brother who's older than me. It's always that way, right? If you have an older brother, older sibling or something, sometimes it's people's parents introduce you to music. And a lot of times we hate what our older family listens to. But no, as soon as I saw the covers and listened to that music, I'm like, oh my God.
That was like you said when you were like 7?
Yeah. And so I was immediately, because I was always drawing and stuff. So I was like trying to draw the pictures of Kiss and Alice and trying to write songs then. I had no idea what I was doing, but that's where it started. Yeah. And of course it started me on a weird journey of like going into my mom's like makeup and trying to, and so here I am 7 years old putting on jewelry and makeup and screaming when I had to get a haircut. And yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder like how, because, David Bowie and Queen and all that stuff was all right close to that. And so as I was discovering all of these artists that were kind of androgynous and, but I didn't, like, what did I care? It was just cool. And then when I got a little bit older, I remember Motley Crue, right? And I saw Looks That Kill, the first music video that I saw, and I went, what the hell is this, right? I stayed up because I saw a magazine with a picture of them, and then I saw the video. We're forwarding to music video time, right? And I recorded it like on a beta machine, right? Or something, and watched it over and over. All my friends at lunch the next day at school, I'm like, you got to come over and watch this. So we watched this over and over and over again. And I didn't realize, number one, until, honest to God, I watched that video 1,000 times and I didn't really realize it until like within the past 10 years, I showed that video to a girlfriend and I'm like, hey, you got to see this video. This is what changed my life, I'm watching it and she's like, they're putting girls in cages. I never even noticed. I was a kid. Didn't even clue in that they were like it makes sense now knowing Motley Crue, right? I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Oh my gosh. I think that's funny because there was that thing where people were afraid of rock music or trying to create a pandemic of fear. And you had, Dee Snider and coming out defending it.
Yeah.
Brilliantly so.
Yes.
And, making the point that was ridiculous. And then, of course, we saw what happened to music and how in other types of music, I'm not going to name what types, but in other types of music, it became very vulgar at times and became even aggressive at times. And then we got these warnings on music that said, parental discretion or whatever it was. And which then everyone wanted to get because that meant your record was cool. And,
I wish I had a reason to put that. My stuff's instrumental now. I'm not offensive enough. I need something to have a sticker on there.
Yeah, you need some kind of warning for people so oh, wow, this is taboo in some way. I got to get in on it.
It may contain the devil's chord,
Yeah, exactly. Or, hidden messages when played backwards, and they can be really friendly messages like, please pick up a cupcake here and, whatever it might be.
Or was that Simpsons with when Paul McCartney was on there? He's like, if you play whatever song goes backwards, there's a recipe for lentil soup.
Oh, exactly.
Like,
yeah. Maybe that's why that was in my head. It's so crazy. The Simpsons has programmed so many of us, I think, without our knowledge.
There's not a single day that goes by that I don't either quote The Simpsons or hear somebody quote classic Simpsons, and nobody ever goes, what's that? Every single person gets it. It's kind of weird, but
I don't know much of their stuff from. It's funny, the newer stuff I don't know as well.
No.
Which it's too bad. But then again, I got interested in South Park and stuff like that as a kid when it came out.
Yeah.
And I watched that show change. I watched it evolve. When we got into it when I was 11, 12, it was just this goofy show. with swearing and weirdness, and we liked it. And then when we became like 16 and it was 4 years into it and it became satire, we were like, oh, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
So for my gen, it was like the perfect show, the way it growed and curved that way,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you obviously got hit, like you said, hard by this theatrical style of rock music, by all these different incredible bands. And when did you start deciding that you were going to play the guitar?
Well, I started off, I think I just wanted to create music somehow. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. In fact, when you're a kid, you're listening to the records or the music and you don't even know who's playing what instrument really, or what instrument is making the sounds. But I was around 8, so fast forward a year later, and I remember we moved to Toronto, my family, and we had all these like pots and pans that were left in this like kind of barn that we had there on our property. And so my dad sees me like bashing these pots and pans like I'm being Peter Criss, right? Doing a drum solo. And he's like, all right. He brings me to the music store in town and gets me lessons. Because he's like, if you're going to do this, may as well do it right, learn how to play. So I took drum lessons for, probably 4 years. And that was my instrument. And so now when you hear my like solo albums, which I guess what I've done for the past since like 2019 or something, every sound, everything that's on there with few exceptions is me one way or another. And I don't say that to be like, hey, look at me, but I'm saying it because I've picked up solo albums from artists and then you read the credits and go, they didn't do anything on this. they sang on it or whatever, but they didn't write any of the songs. They didn't play any instruments or anything. So I'm like, this is a true solo thing. I'm going to do everything. But like back to the question basically was I was playing drums and when I started jamming with other people from school and they played guitar, I mean, this is a guitar player thing. So sorry, but if you're a guitar player, I'd be playing the drums and they'd be playing the guitar and I'd be like, nah, I wouldn't do it that way. So that's what guitar players do. We go, I'd play that better. So
I do that different.
Yeah, here's how you do it. Let me show you.
What an interesting point.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree. I think singers are a little bit like that too. Sometimes I'll watch a vocalist and I'll go, yeah, I do it a little bit different than that. And sometimes I watch them and I go, holy crap, that's about as good as I think you could do with that setup,
And lyrics, the same thing, right? If you write lyrics, you'll hear, like, even a song you really like, and then there's one line where you go, they could have done something better there, that pulls it down a little in the quality. And that's, I don't think that's being a jerk. It's just that critique from loving the art,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's natural for us to form opinions and have our own ideas about it. That's what art's supposed to do.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's like, it's fine to encounter something and be like, I just love everything they did about it. But it's also fine to encounter something and go, well, I like this, but I might do this. And remember to always keep that perception of yourself. I mean, that's what I would say, like when we're working on our own music, it's like, make sure that we're not in that. You have to love yourself, but you can't be in a love affair with yourself. You got to keep that perspective so that you can keep the quality coming out. Yeah. And that's something I think you've managed to do. Because I was listening to, first of all, I started listening to some of the bands that you've been a part of. Black JuJu, Creeping Beauty, Famous Underground.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, very cool. Different sounds. Black
Definitely,
two were kind of similar-ish, and then one was very different. More like singing melodic, and it was just, I think you were on an acoustic guitar.
Could have gone both ways, like depending on the song. And
Yeah. And so let's talk about that. Years of touring, writing and recording. Was it with these bands that you did touring with?
Some, and then some even before that. Like I was in a band called Boomerang right out of high school, and we were, in fact, not even finished high school, and we had a bus and we were on the road going, like, playing 6 nights a week. And back then, like in magazines and stuff, which now people are like, what's a magazine? I still see them on stands, but I don't know, is anybody buying them? I don't know.
No.
Probably not. But yeah, we so we were out there and just giving her, and some of it was great, some of it was not so great, but I will say that I wouldn't trade those experiences for the world. Almost kind of glad that I didn't like make it at that time, because who knows what, like, life is good now. I mean, life could, you don't know what would happen, right?
I think that, making it will always come with a great cost.
Yeah.
To whoever goes there. I believe it always comes with a great sacrifice. And sometimes it's very public to people and like how that came about with somebody. And sometimes it's like not. And you just think, oh, this person magically got there.
Yeah.
And sometimes cream rises to the top. That's also true in certain cases. Sure, yeah. But gosh, it's awfully, I think a lot of people will stop it if they can. If it's just that, if it's just talent rising, people don't like that too much in the industry.
Yeah.
So,
and the other thing too about that is making it can be defined differently.
Absolutely.
Not only for different people, but different points in your life. So right now, I mean, music is like a part-time job, really. I have a job, I have a business, I have all these things, and so I don't know. I feel successful. I'm doing what I want to do. That's success to me. It's.
Well, I think so. And
I'd like an indoor pool, maybe, and I'd like all those things, but no, I don't need it. I'm happy with. And nowadays, even the people who you think have made it, like you see the touring bands and stuff, and they're out there, and a lot of them are just in debt.
It's unfortunately very true.
It sucks.
And there are people who are very successful, but the pressure on them then is that if they cancel a date, they cancel work for 150, 300 people.
Yeah. And not everybody who is successful is Taylor Swift level successful, right? Everybody seems to think that that's the goal, and it isn't.
I don't think
it isn't for most people.
I don't think,
It's just not even close to being achievable for most people.
I mean, it's so true. I think most of us want to be heard, want to be seen, want the opportunity to have others, put our music in and kind of and judge it for themselves. And you have a couple of quotes that I read in an article. The world doesn't owe you anything, and you don't need anyone's permission to create. And I thought, based on what you were just saying, those ring really true with it as well. Like, nobody does owe us anything, but that doesn't mean we can't go ahead and create something and manifest something amazing and build something in this world.
Yeah.
So I really like that, how those two quotes kind of juxtapose against each other. So where were you born?
In Ottawa.
In Ottawa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And nowadays you're in the Kemptville region?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And you're a music teacher now?
That's just a very part-time job. In fact, I did it more years ago, but then life kind of got derailed and everything, so I don't do that very much anymore, just like one night a week. But I'm a mild-mannered librarian by day, which is like the coolest job in the world. I love it. And I have a reptile business, which is like an education-based reptile breeding business that I've had since 1995. How did I get this old? Wow. Yeah, so I've been I go around to schools, birthday parties, summer camps, all that stuff, and teach people about creepy crawlies.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yep.
so... All right, yeah. I always like to get into people's other passions. Normally I do it, later, but I kind of want to get into it a little bit right now. And that's
I'm
just
derailing this whole thing on you.
Oh yeah, let's do it. And let me ask you about these lizards and whatnot, because I remember being in beavers, in scouts and that, very young, and then bringing in the big constrictor snake, a boa, and us holding it and being like, oh my God. It feels so different than I thought it was going to feel.
And what
it's
it looks like.
Yeah, and it's a giant muscle. Yeah. And I thought I was so proud of myself. I thought I'd gotten over my fear of snakes and reptiles. And now if you tried to put a bearded dragon on me, I'd be like, ah! I'd be all worried. But so how did you start breeding reptiles?
That's another thing that started when I was about 7, or maybe younger, I don't know. But when I was a kid, I just loved animals, and not just reptiles, but all animals. But mostly, for whatever reason, I gravitated towards snakes and lizards and turtles and frogs and all that stuff.
Okay.
And it just kind of grew from there. And then next thing you know, I moved to Florida to go to zoo school, and I just wanted to continue it. And so moved back to Canada and started the business. Yeah. That has kept me going for all these years I've been doing this.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And it's I'll admit at times it's like, man, this is the things that people don't think about are like reptiles are a huge commitment. They live for a long time, like forever. And I'm like, man, I've got tortoises that are going to be around long after I'm gone. I'm like, what am I doing?
Have you had to like put them in your will for people?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And I got to put like a little, write something on this one, like put a little, we had like nail polish right on the tortoise shell, but
dang it. Sorry. I'm going after this. There's this one mosquito, folks, and he was close and I was going to smack him. But if he comes back, I'm going to smack him. It's going to be loud in the microphone, but I don't care because mosquitoes are the worst, folks.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you're saying about these reptiles, I like it because I get into certain things and I get obsessed with it for a while. I get kind of manic with it. So I really got into this channel called Ants Canada on YouTube because he has like, first of all, he started showing people all about all these ants collections.
I know the person, yeah.
Right? And now he has like, I can't even know what it's called, but it's like a giant terrarium and he's growing like a jungle ecosystem inside of it. And for everything from like the tiniest little, whatever you call them, all the way up to like bigger predators. Because he has a little baby crocodile in there right now, caiman. And it's eventually when it gets to be 6 feet, he's going to put it outside in a 60-foot pond, something like that.
Which will work in the summer, I guess. Yeah.
I don't know, man. He's wild, but I really enjoy it because like
it's cool. Yeah.
It's the creepy crawly stuff, but from a distance for me. Yeah. So I don't have to get too afraid. Although I find the older I'm getting, the more fascinated I am just by all of it. Spiders, everything. Like they're just fascinating.
That's, I think, part of what helps me with the passion, not just for the animals, but to be sort of an ambassador. Like I give them the voice they don't have. And I don't, how do I explain this? They're the stars of the show, right? And it gives me an opportunity to educate people and maybe give them a different perspective. Even if they don't all of a sudden love them, they can at least learn to respect them a bit. The two places that I come from there is one, I am terrified of spiders. So my entire life I've been afraid of spiders. I've worked with like black widows in the wild. I've worked with a lot of spiders, but I've never got over the fear.
Yeah.
So I don't go around killing them. I leave them alone. I just don't really want them in my house. And the other thing was when I was just a kid, around the same time period, I was like 7 or whatever, and my brother and his friend, they're like 5 years older than me, they found a garter snake on the lawn. And they picked it up and they were playing with it. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. It's a snake, And this lady was coming, I say she was a lady, she was probably like, I don't know, 21 or something like, but I was just a kid, right? So this old lady had this little stroller and a kid and she was coming down the street and they had the snake and she saw it and she just like abandoned the baby. She's sobbing. She was just like in hysterics. And as a kid, even as a little kid, I was like, they're holding it. It's not hurting them. So why is she so afraid? And I couldn't quite understand it until I started to really, notice my spider phobia, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is where they sort of make sense. And so it gave me that kind of desire to help, knowing how the prejudice towards reptiles is so bad that people will kill them on sight. People will drive their car, go out of their way to run over a snake or even a turtle, which is asinine, but
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, shouldn't run over anything if you can avoid it. But
it's sad whenever you see roadkill, in my opinion. It doesn't matter what it is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I saw a couple of squirrels on the way here and I was like bummed out,
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a life that didn't need to be taken.
Compassion is a good thing. Empathy is a good thing. People, the more we feel it, the better, in my opinion.
I agree, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I want to ask you next about, well, first, before we go away from the reptiles, do you have a favorite snake? Do you have any snake that like you prefer, or is it just
like
go back
species or individual or like?
Well, like I don't know anything about them except that I saw at a wedding this year, I saw a corn snake of some kind outside, or a garter snake, grass snake with like a frog in its mouth.
Okay, probably garter snake.
And the frog was like trying to like, hello, I'm in here. I'm not yet swallowed. And I was like, I don't know. I can't do anything for you, buddy.
Yeah.
You know, it's part of nature now.
Yeah. At least I don't like that either, but at least it is part of nature. So I can kind of,
Oh,
go,
yeah.
all right, I'll just, I think toads are probably one of my favorite creatures on earth. Because a toad is like, you look at it and go, what a helpless creature. But, they've got great defenses. They camouflage, they puff their body up.
Yeah.
They will pee on you if you pick them up. They're poisonous, which is great. That's my personal favorite. They're only dangerous if you put them in your mouth. Don't eat a toad. Everything's good. So yeah, I love toads, and they can eat like 1,000 mosquitoes a night. They're like, we need one right here, right now. I didn't bring a toad. Could have solved our mosquito problem. But snakes, corn snakes from the southeastern U.S. are among my favorites, always have been. And hognose snakes are extremely cool. They're one of my favorites, yeah. Just for interesting behaviors.
Yeah, the other show I like is Naked and Afraid, and the problem there is that they'll kill snakes. They'll kill whatever, but they eat it.
Yeah, you still wonder, like, are you doing because you have to eat it, or are you doing it because it's a show?
They're on this challenge, right? They're trying to prove that they are the best survivalists. There was a vegetarian on this last year, and she made it 25 days, which is very impressive, and she had to tap out because of malnutrition, but it took a long time. She's just giving up too many calories in the day, not able to bring them back in.
Trying, yeah.
She did great. She did really good.
Yeah, that is impressive.
And sometimes, yeah, I like the dramatic side of it. And I think everybody kind of fell in love with reptiles from my generation because of the Crocodile Hunter.
Yeah, Steve Irwin.
And that just made us all go goo-goo for it. And I mean, rightfully so. I mean, they are such stunning creatures.
Yeah. And he had such a great enthusiasm, and that was
the best.
Yeah,
the best. And I'm glad to see his son now doing it, carrying on the tradition.
Yeah, and his daughter. They're really. Every now and then, I don't have any normal TV, so I don't really get to see pretty much anything. But it's all online, right? So I'll just see little clips on Instagram or something, and go, "Wow, they are really."
It's amazing
doing
to see them.
It justice, you know. And
yeah,
and what I do like is that they're not. They have the enthusiasm, but they're not trying to be him. Because that would be, you would see through that and it'd be lame, right? But they're not doing that, and I think that's important.
No, and it's wild how much he reminds me of him, though. And it's like, wow. Like I'm glad that the mother must have kept him in their life by showing them who he was. And
sure, at least he had that too. He had a record of
exactly.
Exactly.
You'd be like, look, this was who Dad was. This is what Dad did. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I have a friend, and she's very much so into the artist Fifi Dobson.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw it said in your bio or whatever, it was talking about how you were requested to audition for Fifi Dobson.
Twice, yeah.
What's the story with that?
Okay, so where do I even start? I have a website like I do now, but this is going back a ways, and I don't know what, I guess, people search stuff, and it was, and I think this was MySpace days too. So I'm not sure where, but I got an email, and it was Fifi's management at the time, and they were holding auditions, and it wasn't an open cattle call or anything. They were picking people, and I'm like, yeah, I'm there, because I'm not sure they even knew where I was. But I'm like, yeah, I don't care. I'll drive the 4 hours or 3.5 hours, whatever it was, because I love Fifi Dobson. I was a fan.
Yeah.
Before this was only her first album out. The next album was coming.
Yeah.
And they sent me a couple of songs to learn the newer stuff that has been long out now, but at the time it wasn't. And so I went and auditioned and it was weird because when I got there and I'm hanging around and a couple of her band members from her actual band were already there. So she had 2 guitar players already there who were in her band. And I'm like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Right. But I was, one of her producer or whatever was talking, and he was saying, people just ditch in the middle of a tour. I guess maybe that happened to them.
Oh, wow.
And so, or maybe they're just anticipating, and then maybe they're looking for like an understudy type thing. Right. So, Ultimately, it was funny because I kind of made friends with the other band members. Like we hit it off pretty well, and Fifi was great too. So we hung around, had pizza and all this stuff, and it was a fun time, and played a few songs. And it was funny because one of her real guitar players who got the gig, obviously he's already in the band. He's like, "Oh, you're playing that song, and it's in regular tuning, standard tuning. That's drop D." I'm like, "Shit, I learned it I learned it the hard way." So yeah, I wasn't quite, and also it was the first time I ever went to an audition like that, like a pro audition. So I didn't really know what that was expected of me, and understanding it a little better. It was a learning experience because I wasn't really performing, and I think that they wanted that. You feel a little awkward. I was just like, "Oh, I'm gonna play the song." If I were auditioning people and somebody came in and was like doing power slides across the floor, I'd be like, "What are you doing?" Yeah, bro, play the song, But I get it because they want to know, is this person like gonna rock out? Or are they gonna do power slides across the floor when they're not supposed to?
How does it look when they rock out?
Yeah,
I get it.
Glenn Sobel from Alice Cooper, the drummer, says, and he said in this interview, he was like doing it's an interview, but whatever, he's doing drum stuff. And he was talking about like his stick tricks and stuff that he does. And he's like, when you're playing with a bigger artist and you're a hired gun, those tricks can get you a gig, but they can also lose you a gig, right? Because if you're playing like Only Women Bleed, and that's Alice Cooper, that's his moment. That's not your moment, right?
Okay.
And if he's there doing like, then it's like, okay, do that again and you're out of here. We'll get someone who like respects the material and the audience and the show and that. So you have to know when it's your time to jump up to the spotlight and
it's so true.
Be a rock star, right? And
it's like a relay, right? Being in the band and everybody has to take that baton and run with it, and sometimes, like for me, I need that lead guitarist to take things away at a certain point.
Yeah.
And because I've got nothing left, the verse is over, etc. We're going to the solo, whatever it might be. And it's someone else's moment. And sometimes it's a bass riff that's really catchy, and I need to make sure that bass riff gets heard before I come in. All kinds of little details, like you said, where other people need to shine and get out of the way. That's something I always love to do. Like when the guitarist goes to solo, I love to get the hell out of the way.
Gives you a breather too, right?
Yeah, I go to the drummer. I talk to pretend to have a moment with the drummer. Sometimes I actually do have a moment with the drummer. Like how the hell did that happen a couple minutes ago or whatever. Yeah. And then, then I go back to the guitarist, put my arm around them, whatever the moment might be. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're trying to do, right? Create moments, give moments that people remember and they cherish, and then that can really stick. It's like another hook. It's an extra hook to that song.
For sure, yeah. And after that, like I actually had the second audition on bass. So I was called back, went back, and had a good time. Probably auditioned a little better that time, but still didn't get the gig. And I also feel like I'm kind of like, even though I wasn't saying, like, I don't go, "Oh, I'm a big fan," and I'm just like saying it because I want the gig. I genuinely listen to Fifi Dobbs and stuff, and I love her voice and the songs and everything, because I love good songs. That's it, but I think I'm like, just even based on appearance, I look like the metal guy, right? I still I just live with that. Everything I do, this new stuff that I have going on, there's some metal in it, and I will, proudly wear that badge of honor. But there's a lot of other stuff that people go, "Well, that's not metal," and it's like, and that's fine. That's what it's not supposed to be, But
yeah. Some of the songs that I was listening to, that's all yours. That stuff. Some of it, I was like, oh, I can kind of hear like vocalizations in the guitar. I could hear other band influences from the 70s. For me, I could hear Cheap Trick at times. It was interesting, but like,
I hadn't thought about that, but
yeah, there's just some of the vocalizations of the guitar, the way it was going into the melody and stuff. I was like, oh, that's nice, and I get triggered in certain memories with it. And man, it's impressive that you're playing all those instruments, because you are doing the drums, but like you said, you had some lessons.
Most of that is like programmed now.
Okay.
But I still, when I program it, I make it as close to real drums as I possibly can. And sometimes it's a hybrid, electronic, and then you mix it in.
It's wild
because
what you can do.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, I don't want every drum hit to be the same.
Yeah.
So I go through every single thing, and I try not to overcorrect things because one of the things I noticed about production, and that's the other thing too, is I'm like sort of, I say burden, but I love it. I'm producing all this too. So I have to be able to listen to it sort of somewhat objectively and go, okay, does it sound sterile? Is it going to sound like, and I've heard this a lot with, particularly radio bands of like, whether it's pop and it could be metal or even country, a lot of them sound like they're just using all the same plugins, the same person is mixing it. I'm not saying all of them, and I don't blame that on the artist. Like, these are all great musicians and writers and that, but just this sonically, I go, okay, my ears are tired already because it just all kind of sounds like they're pushing for that radio sound, and sometimes I like to hear something that's flawed. That's human.
Yeah, for sure.
The drummer needs to speed up once in a while, or maybe not too much. But
I know what you're saying. You like a little flavor in there and allow it to breathe. And so what? Like, I get it. Some music does have place for what you're talking about. And I actually think the more talented the musician, the more what you're talking about is applicable. See, that's what's interesting about it. So it's like, if Jimi Hendrix wants to like let things breathe and like do whatever he wants to do there, I'm like, okay, hands off. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like if someone's telling me they're not that experienced and they're like, oh, I want to go off the click. I want to do this. I don't need the click or whatever. I'd be like, slow down. Yeah. We will get there. But for yourself, I could totally see it. Like how you can play all these instruments. You can do all this. Have you ever sang before?
Not well. And I have a horrible story. I don't even know what time it is. We're just going on with this.
Oh, we're great. We're great.
Man,
we got lots of time.
I was, when I was a kid, I used to sing all the time. Like I, started again with Kiss and Alice Cooper and stuff. And I discovered a band called Prism, which I loved. I really loved the singer. And so I started, there's a picture of me like being about 8 years old in a onesie with a little friggin' record player that had a microphone attached to it, like on Christmas, me singing.
That was the best.
And so here I am singing Spaceship Superstar over and over, driving everybody crazy, I'm sure. But my family were pretty tolerant and supportive.
Yeah.
So here I was doing that. And the same year, I'm in grade 3, and I'll never forget this. I think I wrote a blog about it, which is probably still not up there. I should make a YouTube video about this story. So grade 3, I'm sitting in class, and it's one of those free periods where, you can doodle, talk, do whatever you're doing for like a certain period of time. So I'm doing this, and there's a kid behind me, a girl who was singing, but like in a stupid make-believe voice. We're kids, right? So she's singing. The teacher starts screaming at me. And like everybody's like quiet, like what the hell, right? We're just like kids, and she's screaming.
Yeah.
And she's like, if you want to sing, then you sing for the whole class. And she's screaming at me, and I'm like, I wasn't doing anything. And I was a pretty shy, quiet kid. I just like, and she's like, stand on your desk. And I'm like, what? And so I stand on there's one of those desks, I don't know who remembers this, but it had a chair attached to the desk. So I stand on the chair, and she's like screaming, no, on your desk. So I had to stand on the top of it. She'd probably be fired today just by that. And so I'm standing on the desk, and of course I'm like crying. I'm scared shitless, right? And she's like, if you want to sing for everybody. So now she puts me on the spot, and I'm totally embarrassed, and and so there's the fight or flight, right? I told her to go F herself and everything. And again, I'm like 8 years old, and I just laid into her. So she screams, like sends me to the office. My parents are called. My parents come, and they totally took my side because they're like, there's no way that this kid would have told you to like go.
Oh my goodness.
There's no way.
He wasn't the one singing lady.
No. And so, and even if I was, that's not the behavior, but I wasn't. Like, that's the thing. All these years later, I maintain I wasn't singing. But the point is,
she was wrong either way.
It wasn't until like geez, probably within the past 15 years where somebody asked me that question about singing. And so I've always been kind of mic shy. I can sing a little, I can harmonize a little. I'm not, the guy who's going to go up and like, hey, sing a third here and like just nail it every time. That's not me. I can hear it, but singing it, I just don't have the experience, right? Gang vocals, I can get in there. That's no problem. And sometimes my new album has some vocalizations that I was doing. Not well, but it's there. Because it's recording, I can just keep doing takes of it, right? It's just basically oohs and ahs and uhs and stuff like that.
Harder to do than people think as well.
Yeah, harder to do than I thought.
It's all vocals, in my opinion. Like once you get into it, it's like, oh, you want perfection? Oh, that's going to be difficult.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is when you're doing it, and this is something that I think a lot of people who aren't familiar with the whole process don't understand, is that you could go, all right, I nailed that vocal. I'm just going to hit a harmonizer and I'm going to do the harmonizer. And you can, but it's going to sound really thin because it's actually the imperfections, right, that make it bigger. Your vibratos and the slightly off things. So if it's perfect, it's not as good.
Yeah, we always got someone else to do backing vocals for me in the band. We were lucky that way. We had somebody who was able to harmonize with me, and then, like you said, it adds a little flavor to it. And I'd also harmonize as well, so then it's kind of a little trickery.
Yeah,
but it's great, right? And it's real. And like you said about, you don't want every drum hit to be the same.
If it's all one person doing the harmonies,
that's right.
It works if there's no but you can kind of tell sometimes.
Oh yeah. Part of the magic of Tegan and Sarah, of these twins, is that they have these identical voices as well as, being identical. And when they do their harmonies, it's really trippy. Especially when it's live, right? Because they're pulling that trick on you.
Well, even Nelson. Remember Nelson?
Yeah.
Yeah, I only it's funny. I look like Nelson now, and I'm looking at myself with the hair. But Nelson from the 80s or early 90s, the Nelson twins, right? The only reason that even came to my mind is I'm reading a book called Nothing But a Good Time, and I'm almost done, and there's a lot of them in there talking about their experience, so they're twins and singing, and the harmonies. It's something when you get siblings that you don't always get with it's a band called Lawrence. Have you heard them? You gotta check them out.
Okay.
It's not metal or barely even rock, but damn, yeah. So the one thing about that though was when I heard this thing when somebody asked me if I could sing, and I said, well, not really. And they said, well, did somebody say you couldn't sing? And, because sometimes somebody goes, oh man, you suck. And then you're like, oh geez, and then like, no, not really. And then that memory
came in.
Yeah. And it's not that I ever forgot it. It wasn't like a deep repressed memory or anything, but I never put the connection.
Occurred that way.
And I thought, holy shit, my life could be really a lot different. Again, nothing wrong with my life. I'm not complaining, but the path that I took could have been a lot different had I kept singing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, and I mean no disrespect to anybody, because I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of great musicians and singers over like my whole life. But sometimes as a songwriter, would have been nice to be able to say, here's my song and I'm singing it, and or been in a band where I was doing part of the singing.
Yes.
It would have changed things for sure. But
100%.
And sometimes I think I should, is it too late? I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, you've got the gear to play and to try different things. And I would definitely, try and push yourself, or at least check your range out, see mark in where your range is and then play with that. I was really bad myself with this. And that's because I'm good at doing voices. So for a long time, I thought I could just fake it and I could change ranges, and you can't.
But it wasn't your voice.
Correct. And that's a thing. So, I mean, I figured that out, and that's fine. I don't do anything silly like that. But I mean, that's the thing about voices. Someone was talking the other day here, and he's just started singing. And he was saying he was figuring out basically that it has an upper and lower register. And I was like, yeah. So you were singing the whole song in the lower register, and then your mom was like, yeah, but that's not how it's sang. It's sang in the upper register. You know what I mean? And, and I was like, yeah, he's trying to cheat there. He's trying to sing everything an octave lower or whatever it might be, you know?
It was like Prince always said he did a lot of that falsetto stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And people thought he was trying to be stylish, but he was like, it's just easier. It's like, I just like to go for whatever's easier to sing. I'm like, that's kind of interesting because it certainly was a style, right? And
one of the freest artists of our time that I think we're ever going to see, like not controlled like many others. And same with as Bowie and Dylan. You had some of these artists that you just couldn't control. Their art was just way too powerful. And in rock music, of course, Van Halen and Hendrix and a lot of these guys came out. And it's the same thing. It's just, it's uncontrollable talent. That's just.
And I always say, I will defend the original Van Halen lineup and David Lee Roth. I know everybody goes, well, Sammy was the singer, right? And Dave was just the showman. And I'm like, no, look how many radio hits they had. They didn't have that because of Eruption. I mean, that was great, but it wasn't just the flashy guitar. It was the songs, and Dave had a delivery, and you can't say he was, like, again, there wasn't auto-tune or pitch correction or whatever. He was on key. He was singing well. He was singing high, singing low, and Michael Anthony always gets the credit. What a great backup vocalist, right? Well, he can't sing harmonies to somebody who's out of tune, like
it's true.
He's off pitch. So, I give a lot of credit for Dave being, because the whole thing, that Van Halen stuff just knocked people on their asses, like not just Eruption, but the whole sound, like everything about it, the attitude.
Yeah, I think there was genius involved in Van Halen all the way. Like I think. When in the beginning, it's interesting because he is such an incredible showman, and then yet at the same time, the vocals are never outstanding enough that they overshadow the guitar.
That's true,
and they never quite even rival the guitar in a way. But his energy always matches or supersedes. And then they're right that Sammy comes along and he is more of a vocalist in the classic sense.
Sure, yeah.
But David Lee Roth was doing some crazy stuff as well, like some weird vocalizations.
Things
man. He was experimenting and doing stuff with his talent, with his voice. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I like them both.
Me too. I do too. Yeah.
But for me as well, I mean, I'm such a melody guy, and of course I love. Like I wasn't the biggest Van Halen person because of when I was born, and
make a difference for you.
Like, so when I heard it later, I was kind of like, oh, is he being cheesy on purpose? You know what I mean?
Pretty much.
And and then I had people explain to me, he's just having fun. He's just going for it. And I was like, okay, I kind of get it more. And
to bring that energy vocally to the records, right? Because it's one thing to say, well, he's a showman, okay, but again, those records were played on the radio a lot. And that's the one thing about my sort of generation of growing up listening to the radio, was stuff like Van Halen and AC/DC and all that. That wasn't like on the classic rock stations. That was what our pop music was. So even the pop bands that were poppier, like the Go-Go's, for example, who I love, B-52s, who I love, they were playing instruments. You know what I mean? They were, the pop music back then, you could still go, okay, I get it. You know, Duran Duran, the bass player's ripping. It was really good. So, even George Michael, it was like, okay, there's still instruments going on here. Still, you know, like I can understand it and relate to it, I guess. And
we've gotten further and further away from it. If we go back to Cab Calloway in front of the big band and the way that what a great showman he was and how he set the tone for everyone to come, because he had to be larger than life because there was this giant band behind him.
Yeah.
And so this band keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
It's a laptop.
Right? And then the more people who get involved in the business end, they keep going, well, we need less people. And now we've got bands that are legit 2 people.
Yeah.
Or
they have an entourage of people that don't actually do anything, or dancers, I guess, which is fine. That's entertainment, but show business, right?
I mean, Michael Jackson, right? He's one of those musicians who kind of changed the game up with the presentation, where he was like, well, we can present the coolness of the guitar, but we're not necessarily going to present the whole band all the time. And I wonder if that was because of his experience with Jackson 5 and the way that was designed to present the five guys in the band. And it's fascinating. You can go with marketing and with planning a band. You can do anything, and you just really have to commit to it one way or another. I mean, when I watch Ghost these days, I go, "Wow, that's so." I'm so glad someone had the balls to do this, because it's brilliant now.
You know, I had to wonder, like, when something like that, like Ghost, comes along. Yeah, I'm like, okay, where did this come from?
Right,
where did this happen? Because these are not now the band members probably spent their lives playing shit clubs and all this stuff, right? Can I say shit?
Oh yeah.
Right,
fuck, whatever. I
said it twice, so
yeah,
it's like,
shit, fuck, whatever.
Okay, so they're playing shit clubs. They're doing, whatever, the same as the rest of us in the world. No offense to the clubs, but you know what I'm saying. They're not like playing arenas and stadiums and stuff. They come out of nowhere and they're huge. Yeah, and you don't really see that all the time. So I'm like, okay, somebody was sinking a lot of money into this, going, this can't fail. And
exactly.
It did not fail. It didn't fail whatsoever. So yeah, it's a cool success story, I guess. I don't know what the history, but I certainly don't think that Ghost were playing little bars.
I don't think
I
it
don't
works.
think that happened.
I don't think it works. And I think you're absolutely correct that there had to be big money behind it in some capacity, saying, like you said, this can't fail. Let's make this the biggest show. Yeah. And I'm sure it was sold that way, that this is going to be a huge spectacle. This isn't just a rock band.
Yeah. And if you can do it that way, then because they're probably going, okay, well, Kiss is like kind of going, we need something newer for the younger people that has the same, for more modern, of course. And, but right now, we're getting further away from whatever we were talking about. But
no worries.
This is what happens. But when musicians talk about music, right? It's like, but for me, this is anybody who knows me probably knows, because I always talk about this. So many people think like metal people and rock, like particularly the 80s people. Nostalgia is really powerful, right? People are always like, oh man, there's never anything good came out past 1987 or 1996 or whatever. And it's like, no, you just, that's your like period of time. That's your impressionable period. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, it's kind of insulting and lazy to say that, because there's ridiculous amounts of great music. But what I think a lot of people are missing is that it's not all in North America. It's all in friggin' Japan. The rock bands, not just metal, but rock bands and stuff in Japan, it's amazing, because the whole package is there. The visuals, the theatrics, the songs, the virtuosity, the musicianship, because everybody there is like ridiculous. Wow. Yeah. And it's like, what the hell is going on, right? This is phenomenal. So for the past, I don't know, since just a little before the pandemic, I started to discover some of these artists and just, kind of fell in love with a lot of them. And fascinating.
Interesting.
That I mean, I understand a little bit of Japanese, but not enough to follow along with the whole like song of lyrics. And I can, go and like Google Translate it or whatever. But a lot of times I don't even bother. It's not that I don't care or that I'm devaluating lyrics. Lyrics can be important. But when I listen to it, I just feel it. Some of my favorite singers, and also I find certain languages you can hear singing that sound right. And to me, when I hear, and I can tell that, like, if I'm hearing something that's like Korean or Chinese or whatever, but I find the Japanese, what's the word I'm looking for? Just the language. There's a word here, but I'm missing it. But it flows nicely to my ears anyway with music.
Fluency.
Fluency or
fluidity.
Something,
absolutely. I fell in love with animes years ago, and the theme music was always an incredibly interesting part of it. And there's also animes or an anime that I watched that was about like a guy in a band, and like all these legends. They were referencing Jimi Hendrix and all these other legends, but not by name, just like by cool picture. And
Okay.
it was really awesome. It was a cool anime. Can't remember the name of it. But again, I have a great appreciation for, like you're saying, all this art that's all around the world, not just in the mainstream of things, which is always interesting to keep an eye on to see who is taking over the world in whatever capacity. Yeah. I mean, the Swift Mania stuff, to me, I like seeing it because I witnessed Spice Girls with my sister, and it was equal. I remember it being just as insane. I remember people with sticker books, just the merchandising was absolutely next level, you know? Yeah. So
I never had, even, when it was big, when the Spice Girls were like at their height, I never saw them, but I never, there were the rock people or metal people, or some people just, oh, this is like manufactured and it sucks and all that. And I'm like, at least for the most part, they're putting out a positive message for kids. Yeah. It's entertaining. They're giving them a big show. I don't know, what's really bad about this?
Yeah, it was mostly about celebrating being a girl. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
No, and songs were catchy. And
exactly. They were having fun.
Which is funny because in the 90s, I liked, there weren't a lot of things. There were a lot of stuff. Music is kind of about relatability, right? So there were a lot of bands that I overlooked because I didn't relate. I was like, this is crap. And then as you get older, you go, oh, that wasn't crap. It was actually good. I just didn't relate.
That's right.
And so there are a lot of bands like that. But I was listening to Rob Zombie, Marilyn Manson, and I wasn't really listening to the Spice Girls, but they were one that was up there on my radar as like, I think this is cool.
The two you just mentioned, though, were equally fascinating artists from the time, if not more so. I mean, Rob Zombie creates a whole genre of music,
like art,
exactly, rock, of art, exactly. Yeah. And who was the other one you just mentioned?
Manson.
And Marilyn Manson, again, he changes everything, blows it up in people's face, and made evil again, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Somehow he made people afraid of rock music, metal, or whatever it was.
Yeah,
I mean,
I wish I'd thought of it,
right?
And in a way, a lot of us did, because I mean, I thought of it because I listened to the same stuff he was listening to, like Alice Cooper and,
He was the perfect salesman for it. He was the perfect man for the job. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, like, God.
Yeah, and as somebody, again, like I said, you don't necessarily have to be a great singer. Not that there's anything wrong with having, being a great singer, but he could sell the product. He would sing something or scream something at you and you believe it.
Oh, yes.
It didn't have to be that he was a good singer.
Yeah.
He had a good voice.
Yep.
And he's doing well again. The new stuff that came out, I've seen a couple of videos, and somebody that I followed somebody's career since forever is now in his band. And I like the fact that Manson is now showing his band again. Because for a few years, I was really disappointed. I'm like, man, every time I've seen them, it's like the band or they don't even have a light on them. They're just in the dark.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And then he would just leave the stage, and instead of like letting the band do something, the lights were just off, and they're just standing there going, what the hell?
Ridiculous.
Yeah. But I think he was messed up. Like, he seems to have it together now. He went through enough stuff to maybe go, I better get my life, and whatever. I'm happy to see him doing good stuff. Now, I know there are probably people going, well, he's a monster and he's done all these terrible things, but it still hasn't really been proven. So I'm kind of going until it's
proven, right?
Yeah, I'm just
that's fair enough.
Keeping myself out of that,
Hey, look, the music industry, the entertainment industry right now is going to go through massive shock blows, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. It's just the fact that people are people. Yep. And sometimes when you give people power, they misuse it.
Power and
greed.
No consequences for your actions.
That's right.
And like in the, the back in the 80s, right? When like people like Vince Neil gets in a car accident and kills somebody and maims other people and buys his way out. And I'm not saying this, making it up. He said it his own words. He paid this many $1 million to not go to prison, basically, because there was a lot riding on. He had they just invested this money to keep him out of jail.
Yeah.
And half the time you have to consider that those the bad behavior was condoned. And you also have to consider from the standpoint of like labels and all these other people who were basically stealing from a lot of them. It's a lot easier to steal from people who are high and distracted and everything else.
Not living in a reality.
Yeah, so let them be stoned, let them be drunk, let them be on the edge of death at all times, because we're just making all this money they don't even know about.
And keep them in debt. That was the other thing I've been told many times. We were talking about it, musicians being put in debt by labels so that they keep working.
Yeah, so they're on tour for like a couple of years and they come back and go, all right, I'm ready to like buy a house. And they're like, no, you owe us this much money.
Yeah, exactly.
Like how I just played for like 10,000 people a night for 3 years and I owe what? It's somebody's making money, right?
It's absurd.
Yeah. And I think things are different now, but there's still a lot of, the sharks are still there swimming in different waters. It's still pretty bad, I think.
So you have 15 music videos.
At least.
At least 15.
It's probably more now. Yeah.
And so that's, like you said, going back to your inspiration from seeing the Motley Crue video.
I didn't put any girls in cages.
Man, come on.
Voluntary, yeah.
I also love music videos and making music videos. I think it's just the best and the most fun, and getting to continue your work. Yeah. And another thing I saw was that you're going to Nashville soon?
Yeah. I don't know what the date is, but the end of October. So,
okay.
Yeah. So I have one show in Ottawa, October 10th at Avant-Garde Bar, which I'm looking forward to. I've never played there, so it should be exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And then like a week or two later, I'm heading to Nashville.
So you've been to Nashville before?
Yeah, a couple of times. It's a Josie Music Awards. So for those who don't know what that is, it's world's biggest independent music award show. And it's at the Grand Ole Opry. And so I will tell you that sitting there in the Grand Ole Opry in the nominees section going, what the hell? How the hell did I get here? Right? That's bizarre. I'm from Kempville, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so I've been nominated a few times and haven't won anything, but every time I've been nominated for Musician of the Year, guitar category. And I mean, this is international. So you have to figure that. Wow. I'm probably going to get the numbers wrong, but it's, I don't know, let's say something like 60,000
I think I read something. Yeah.
And there's like
it's even more.
Less than, I think you're right. There's more, and like less than 3% are nominated.
Yeah.
And guitarists are you kidding? In Nashville alone, I could throw a stone in any direction and hit a better guitarist than me, It's not, but of course, better is
Hey, I think the modesty there is it's a great thing. It means you're never stopping improving. But I mean, in Nashville, I would think it'd be more like you can go there and experiment. You can maybe find some guitarists to see and appreciate and watch or whatever, play with.
What a place, though. There was somebody there who had a house gig at a McDonald's.
Yep.
Maybe where else in the world? Maybe Vegas. But like, can you imagine? Like, I go to my house gig, like I play at McDonald's every week. Like, what do you have to wear the Ronald McDonald outfit or like, it's like Music City, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
And, but this year I'm nominated for, instrumental album of the year and instrumental song of the year and guitar player as well. So I'm not going to jinx it, but at least I feel like, okay, I'm in categories where I sort of belong.
And you've been nominated before.
Yeah, but not in those categories. So this is exciting.
Cool.
Yeah.
This is very exciting.
So whether you know what, just to be nominated to go there and be like in that.
Be in the industry, be in this world of music and get a chance to get up to bat is so much fun. It's everything for us to get on stage and get a chance, right, to share, and then to be regarded for it is even more fun. And
nobody does this for
for
award
accolades
nominations
or monies. No,
it's
we're
just
not
like,
in it for
would
that.
have quit a long time ago if it was that.
I don't think any artists do it for it, in all honesty.
Even the big ones.
If they do it, they're appreciative of the money that will come from this marketing opportunity.
A lot of times, and that's the other thing too, is like, let's say I won.
Yeah.
It'd be something like, okay, now like certain papers or whatever, they can't ignore me.
That's right.
Well, we have a story. We have to run this,
We have to collect feathers in our cap as musicians and use them to our advantage so we can get shows and get better paying shows. And that's the game. Like I had a young musician ask me recently, how do you know what your rate is? How do you know what you're supposed to get paid? And this and that. And I said, why are you getting offered $150? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, that's probably going to happen for a while. Yeah. And then you're going to up it to $3 because you're going to prove to people that you're great. And I'm talking about independent, indie originals. I'm not talking about playing at the Heart and Crown, where you're making good money playing covers all night for 3, but you've got to play for 3 hours.
Yeah. You would think good money, but I'll tell you, when I was younger, like much younger, and I'm talking like 30 years ago, I would play in a cover band. I don't know, it was 30 years ago, but a long time ago. And, each person would basically go home with $100.
Yeah.
And it's 30 years ago about, let's just say, sake of argument. So you get $100 and you get accommodations, you get a meal, and you get drinks.
Yeah.
And sometimes more. Now, you play all these years later, think of how much, imagine, if you don't know, just imagine the price difference of gas and instruments and strings and everything else. And you go there and you get $100, but you don't get any accommodations. You don't get any meals. You might get a drink, but usually you don't. So it's like, man, everybody else is getting like the wage going up.
But musicians
are like, you're lucky you got a gig. Like it's exposure or whatever. It's like,
it's absurd.
And I'm talking about cover gigs too. I mean, different maybe if you're playing in a wedding band or something that maybe you can ask for a higher amount, but it's like, it's not even worth starting the car half the time. And I don't mean to sound like I have a negative attitude. It's fun to get up and play, but man, like,
it's rough.
I got things to do.
It's rough.
And like, I'll stay at home and play
the problem is we're our own worst enemies. If we say we don't want to take that show, it gets offered to someone else
who will take it
because it's their first opportunity or whatever it may be. So that's the disappointing part of it at times. But we still do it. We still fight through.
Yeah.
And
sometimes the exposure gigs really are good exposure.
And make good money at merch. Sometimes you make really great merch on those nights.
Yeah.
So do you prefer Ibanez guitars?
No, not really. I know it's funny because a couple of pictures lately that I've taken, I've been playing my Ibanez. And the main reason is because it's in standard tuning and I bring it to teaching. So when I'm teaching, I'm like, I'm going to snap a picture or whatever. I got that. It's also really light, so it's good for taking photos if I have to go somewhere and just drag, But, I've always played Les Paul. I have a number of pretty wide variety of guitars. One of my favorites, quite frankly, is a Tele, if you can believe it or not. I have my
beautiful
my Telecaster that is
he can really sing, man.
It plays great. It's lightweight. It sounds really good. There's a great clarity.
You bring that to Nashville and you'll fit right in.
Yeah, that's it. Well, the only thing is it's only got 21 frets.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on. But I have a Jackson 7-string. It's got 24 frets. I'm like, man, it's the first 7-string I've had. And I'm kind of like, this is pretty cool. I like this. And on the last album, Hexology, I used it quite a bit.
Awesome.
And not just, a lot of times people will assume that it's just the heavy stuff, right? Like, because you got the low, but even in the kind of surfy type stuff, I'm like, I can do some cool stuff with that low string that I maybe wouldn't be able to do. So, yeah.
So your next album is coming out in November, right?
That's the goal. I'm not like...
You're not fully committed to that yet?
No, because normally it comes out in October, like every year. And this year has just been madness. There's just like, I don't know what it is, but everything got chaotic. Plus, I've started adding more live shows to the, to things. So that speaking of like investment of time and stuff, you got to spend a lot of time rehearsing and everything. Yeah. And if I spend all my time like working on new music, you kind of have to go, all right, I'm in this mode now for a while. So, I was rushing. I was going, I got to get this finished. And
right.
Then I finally kind of stepped back and went, what am I doing?
Why?
I'm going to take something that I'm
worked hard on and rush the ending, and there's no point. It's not good.
Because it's shaping up to be, my opinion, like, it's another thing artists always say that it's going to be my best work. And
it's hard to do, but
I honestly think that they do. When bands say that in interviews, they always say this is the best I think they usually mean it.
They do.
Usually believe it.
They do. It's hard, but they mean it, and they mean they tried their damnedest to do it. I mean, I definitely believe that.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is like my best work or whatever, but I do feel that it deserves better than a push out for no good reason, just because of an imaginary deadline that I put on myself. So,
well,
yeah.
The time flew by.
Oh my God, yeah.
Everybody, let me just say thank you so much to Darren Michael Boyd. He's a very awesome guitarist, musician, librarian. You should get out and support him on Thursday, October 10th at Avant-Garde, 7 p.m. start. There's other bands playing that night. Dawn
Sev,
Hypersex, Banshee, Phantom Fez. It's a great little place. It's got a lot of personality, the Avant-Garde, and you can go there and have some vodka and legitimately, it's lots of different vodka there. Very cool place. Yeah. And thank you so much for coming on. Make sure you check out Darren's new album that will come out maybe November, maybe December. It'll come out, and check out for that. Subscribe to his channel. I'm putting links right below. And I just want to say, again, thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was so much fun.
Yeah, we'll do it again when you come back from Nashville, maybe.
Yeah.
And hear some stories.
Yeah. The ones I can tell you.
Absolutely. And thank you out there for watching. And we'll see you all next time on All Worn Out. Bye-bye, everybody.